there! I'm Virginia Baikova, business mindset strategist, Clifton Strengths expert, and founder of Fulfillment Coaching and Consulting. And I work with women who've left corporate or their 9-to-5s to build service-based businesses that actually feel good and make money without recreating the burnout they walked away from. And this podcast is where I sit down with bold and brilliant women who've done just that. These are real stories from entrepreneurs who left the corporate path and are building something of their own. My hope that you will walk away feeling inspired, supported, and reminded that you are not doing this alone. And today, I'm talking with Erika Taylor-Beck, CEO and founder of Authentic Foundations and a leadership coach who brings nearly 2 decades of corporate experience to the table. From corporate trainer to VP, Erika has seen what works and what doesn't when it comes to leading people well. She is known for her work in emotional intelligence, team engagement, and soft skills training. And she is on a mission to help managers lead with more clarity, connection, and confidence. So let's dive in, Erika. Welcome.
Thank you.
You spent nearly 20 years in SaaS leadership roles. What inspired you to leave the path and start your own business?
It's an interesting story because I never intended to leave. I had no desire to become an entrepreneur, but I had been in SaaS roles. So I was trainer up to VP, and I had been at a company for about 11 years. And during that time, I loved it. I loved my team. I loved the company. I loved what we were doing. But I started to go through a spiritual awakening of sorts, and I started to question things a little bit and wasn't feeling as aligned with corporate values and what we were doing and how we were doing it. And I started to question things and challenge ideas a little bit. And then suddenly out of nowhere, I was laid off and was considered no longer a good long-term fit. And that was really hard. That was, part of my identity. I'd been there for 25% of my life. And I left that job kind of reeling, figuring out what I needed to do next. And I was lucky to find another job within about a month. But the culture was just it was not good. And I loved the team, but I hated the job. I hated the hours. I was really unhappy. And I found myself thinking, there has to be more to life than this. Like, I'm at my desk 12, 14 hours a day. I'm at my desk on weekends. And there has to be more than just this. And I quit. I didn't have anything else lined up. I just realized this is not for me and I'm burning out. And I left and I took some time off to volunteer and just reevaluate life. And I realized how much I missed coaching and developing people. And I didn't want to go back to corporate, but I wanted to do that. And so I stepped into coaching instead so I can help provide leadership coaching for new managers.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this fascinating story. And you mentioned that you've been laid off, and that was a kind of a misalignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, what mindset shifts help you navigate those big transitions?
The mindset shifts were just really starting to come into my own. And I hate to say it, but I was about 40 when this happened. So it was a couple of years ago. And it took me that time to really understand who I was and what I was about, what my passions were, what my priorities were, because my priorities had always been my job and even over my family. And that's something looking back that I regret. And I started to realize I wanted to spend more time with family and loved ones and not at my desk. And so that mindset shift of the priorities was a big help to stepping out of what I was doing and just realizing that, being authentic and what I wanted, that was a big piece to it, was that once I stepped away and it was through a layoff, I would never have left on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm aware of that. And I think the universe was like, you're not taking the hint. We're getting you out of here because you're not picking up on it. And then I went somewhere else and it's like, now we're going to make you miserable until you realize you're not supposed to be here either. And so realizing like, okay, I'm trying to squeeze myself into a box that I don't fit in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And who am I if I'm not my job? What do I value? And so that mindset of being myself and just accepting and loving my life was a huge kind of proponent in helping me to move forward and figure out, what am I passionate about? What do I want to do? What legacy do I want to have? And it wasn't climbing a career ladder. It was making a difference.
Yeah, well, this is beautiful. And you just mentioned your identity, and it seems like, yes, you identified yourself as a hard worker, right? And then something changed. And now you see how creative you could be, right? You see that there are so many options out there when you you are thinking about your identity differently, right? So when you are getting all that mindset shifts.
Yes.
Erika, in our previous conversation, you mentioned that you are focusing on emerging leaders.
Yes.
So why this group?
Sure. So when I was in my corporate roles, I was in positions of slightly higher leadership. I got to promote a lot of first time managers and first time directors. And I saw where some of the gaps were because being a really great individual contributor is one thing, but stepping into a management role is a very different skill set and it's a different mindset. And that's not something that people just naturally have. And so there's a lot of basic skills, so like how to delegate, how to give feedback that you need to have. But there's also the understanding about caring about people and the emotional intelligence of being in a leadership role. Like you're now responsible for other people and their performance and their well-being at work, and that's something that you don't just know or do automatically sometimes. And so that younger group, I really want to help give them a much stronger foundation of leadership skills so that they continue to grow into really great leaders as they move up, versus focusing on people who are VPs or CEOs and having to undo years of maybe bad habits and trying to, like, okay, this is what you've been doing, but you shouldn't be doing that. Let's pivot. I'd rather start early and give them that foundation early on than try to undo it later.
Yeah, and I am 100% here with you because I also used to work with this population because I believe that they were underserved, and all existing executive coaching and other tools, they are mm, accessible to VP levels. And you're right, right? So how to make those who are in the middle successful so that they are growing and great leaders. Well, and thank you for doing that. Thank you for stepping in. And you also mentioned that emotional intelligence is the foundation of good leadership. How do you help new leaders actually develop that skill?
Sure. So there's an assessment that's out there online for free where you can go in and see what your basic score is. So where are you starting? Where do you have some gaps? Where are you doing really well? And then we just talk through some basic ways to improve that. So sometimes it's self-awareness is a big piece of that. And you really need to be able to manage yourself before you can manage other people. And that's just your emotions. So say if you and I have a tough conversation and I'm getting really angry and I lash out at you, that's a really unhealthy way for me to respond in a professional setting. And if you're an employee of mine, you're not going to feel comfortable talking to me after that because I yelled at you, I lashed out. And so I want to help them to just take a pause and get out of that fight or flight mode of, your body just kicks in. It's like, okay, respond. And it's like, no, just pause a second. Let's react. And how do we want to respond to the situation calmly and from a level-headed place? And so a lot of it is just that of maybe taking a breath, step away from your desk, meditate, some simple things that you can do to just help you to breathe a little bit and to understand and see other people and maybe why and where they're struggling so that you can communicate and say, okay, I know that I'm really, frazzled right now. Let's just take 5 minutes and we'll come back and let's talk about it then. And sometimes it's all it takes to just help it from simmering over the edge. So simple things like that.
Yeah, wonderful. And so you are the expert in emotional intelligence, right? I'm just curious, how are you using that in your life, in your business, in personal life?
Oh my gosh, I use it all the time. And that's something that I love about emotional intelligence is it's not necessarily just a business tool, it's a life tool. And I use it with my wife. If we're having a conversation and we're very different people, we have very different approaches to things. And sometimes she is very direct and my immediate response is to get defensive. And I have to take a second and say, that she's coming from a good place. Breathe. She's not attacking. Like, why is this bothering you so much? Okay. And let's respond instead of just reacting to it. And so I use it all the time. And especially with being an entrepreneur, there are so many ups and downs to starting your own business. If you can't ride the waves of the ups and downs, you're not going to last very long. So you have to use it to just stay calm and say, okay, this wasn't a really good week or a month. I didn't make sales, or these conversations didn't go as well as I had hoped, but I still believe in what I'm doing. And here's what I'm going to do differently. And so it helps me to stay in a clear headspace versus just feeling the emotions and panicking. Just, like let all of that go. Logically, you got to put in the work and the time to get to whatever level you're trying to get to. And so when I take a step back, it helps me to just see things from a more objective standpoint than an emotional and subjective standpoint.
Yeah, and this is so powerful, right? It's like being able to take a pause, be present, not just blowing away by your emotions. Yeah, well,
Yes.
thank you. What is the recent win, big or small, that reminded you this is exactly what you meant to be doing?
Oh my goodness, I have a couple actually. So one was a young woman that I had worked with. She had taken my courses because she was trying to apply at her company to a supervisor manager role. She had never been a manager before and wanted to do some work to prepare for her interview and hopefully getting that position. And she got it, which I was really excited for. But even now, so it's been some odd months that she's been doing it, she will reach out and let me know that she had a situation with an employee and she'll go back and look at my courses and kind of review what she should do. And she'll say, like, what would Erika do? What would Erika tell me in this situation? And I love that because it just makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing something right and I'm helping people to feel more confident in how they're handling these situations. So that's a good one. And another one is just somebody who's been a professional. He's much, much older than I am, but he really said, like, what you're doing is it's important and it's powerful and we need more of it. And so he's trying to help me get out there a little bit more because he really believes in what I'm trying to do. And so that made me feel really good that this is needed. It might not be popular yet, but it's needed and it will make a difference once it settles.
Yeah, and this is so important for us to get that type of feedback. It's not like external validation, but it's signs that yes, you're on the right path.
Yes.
Especially that you're so passionate about that. Yeah, I like this so much. And I do remember that last time when we talked, we also touched base on missing team connection, like from the past when you were working in your organization while you were building your career. How are you recreating a sense of community and collaboration in your business now?
Yeah, so I tried to get out there more on social media. I do podcasts, so I get to talk to other folks. I have a podcast of my own, so I've gotten to meet some people that way, and we get to share experiences. What's going well, what lessons learned. How's it going? And the real talk. Like how's it really going? And that's nice to say. Okay, like it's not just me, or these other people are going through this, or here's how they handled it. That's really good advice for me to look into. And I'm trying to join up in the Chamber of Commerce and just networking. So I'm trying to meet other folks and get myself out there and just talking to new people. And that's been really helpful to build a community of folks who are in the phase of life where I'm at that, are more aligned with what I'm trying to do. And that's been really helpful to build that community that I don't have working alone.
Yeah, sometimes it's tough, right? Because entrepreneurship is about being alone, right? Until you get a team. Yeah, but well, I think that you are on the way, right? And if we talk about a corporate world and your career there, what are one or two corporate skills that turn out to be surprisingly valuable as an entrepreneur?
One or two skills. Well, one I think was just general business acumen. So having been, in leadership roles, I've gotten to see how other positions and departments functioned and so how a business works because that's been helpful because now I'm 100% of the business. So I'm marketing, I'm sales, I'm product, I'm support, I'm training. So I'm doing all of the work and understanding all of those components has been helpful because then I can say like what am I missing? Where am I not so good? Because there are areas that I'm really great at and there are some areas that I'm not great at and what resources do I need to help support me in those areas? So that's been really helpful. And I think flexibility, we've had when you're in corporate, you're kind of going in a direction and another project pops up or something isn't working. So we've got to pivot and being able to pivot and not be married to one idea and one direction is crucial because as I was saying, the ups and downs, maybe what you're doing, it's the target audience you have, it's not, your messaging isn't working. So you've got to create new messaging or maybe you're doing something wrong that's just not working. So what can you do instead? And so being able to constantly pivot and think of new ideas and be open to feedback and those ideas is really helpful because it's always changing and so many other people are doing it. So even if you're an entrepreneur and you're working solo, there are so many, like you mentioned earlier, so many other people going through this that you have resources. How did you handle this? What did you do when you ran into this? How did that help? How did that hurt? And that way you can avoid mistakes that others have made or, kind of learn from some of their lessons. And that has been really helpful to just be flexible and open-minded.
Yeah, and I also believe in open-mindedness, and I also believe that this is the crucial. It's a kind of a foundation for us entrepreneurs, right? Because we need to be flexible. We need to be able to pivot fast, or even to change the direction.
Right.
And I also think that this is the beauty of being an entrepreneur, because well, we are trying, something is working for us, something is not. We are creating some services or products or offers, and then we see that something is off. So why not to pivot, right? So, and even if you are alone, you can do that. You can change your decisions fast, right? So
Right.
you just need to be within the community. Like you mentioned before, it's a great tool for us to have a network of people whom we trust,
Hmm.
whom we, talk, so that we can talk about what we're going through. People who understand us, not just regular friends and family, but those who are actually on the same journey, who can support us, lift us up, and, well, give advice, right? So yeah, that, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that our listeners, they will learn something about being flexible too, or they were looking for some, validations that, well, flexibility, this is the real thing for us entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And Erika, for women over 40 who feel the itch to do something different but fear it's too late, what would you say to them?
It's not too late at all. At all. I know that there's a lot of messaging out there that tells us we need to know what we're doing and that you graduate and you get a job and you just ride that path until you die. And it's not true. Like we're constantly changing and the world is constantly changing. And so who you were when you're 20 is not necessarily who you are when you're 40. And so even if you are choosing to start over or if you're being forced to start over, if you're laid off or whatever the situation might be, you're not really starting over, which is nice. You have 40 years of experience and self-awareness and life that you can now build on. Whereas before you're coming at it from a new perspective and you're just getting your footing. Now you know who you are, you know what you like, you know what you're good at, you know what you bring to the table, and you're able to build something not necessarily faster, but in a way that you feel much more confident in because you're more confident in yourself at this point because you've survived everything that you've been through so far. So whatever you're doing now, like that you're going to be able to handle it.
Mhm.
And so it's definitely not too late. 40, I still feel pretty young overall, most days, but it's still, you think you're not even halfway done yet. And so there's still plenty of time to figure things out and pivot and find what you like and find something that aligns with who you are now so that you can live the rest of your life
Mhm.
happily.
Yes, yeah, yeah. We have plenty of times, and you know that in the morning I had a conversation with a potential client, and we were talking about um, um, basic but very, the topics that are core to us, right? So, and it's about not being fearless, but being mature at our age, right? So that we actually do have that self awareness. We know ourselves better. We know what our fears are about, so that we can address that, right? So that we can talk to our fears, we can face them.
Yes.
And yeah, this is different. And also, another thing that we were talking about is that you are growing together with your business. Right. So, and you can invest in yourself, in your growth, and you will see how your business is growing following you.
Hmm.
Well, Erica, thank you so much for sharing your story and wisdom today. And before we wrap up, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
Sure. So I am on LinkedIn and I can, I think, share the link with you there. But I
Yes, I
also have a
will. Yeah.
website as authenticfoundations.podia.com. So that's my website where, all of my services are
Mhm.
located. I'm also on most social media channels. So you can probably find me there as well.
Yeah, well, beautiful. We will link everything in the show notes. And to you who are listening, I hope this conversation reminded you that leadership starts from within. If this episode spoke to you, follow the show, leave a review, and send it to someone who needs to hear that. See you next time. Thank you.